All part of an interview with Reuters news agency, and it sounds like the president is less likely now to sit down for an interview with special counsel Robert Mueller. It may still be possible for President Trump to submit to questioning by special counsel Robert Mueller, but it seems more and more unlikely. In an interview with Reuters, the president said, "Even if I'm telling the truth, that makes me a liar. That's no good."
How do we know what the truth is?
It was a point his attorney, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, would later drive home after trying to clean up a comment he made over the weekend that, in his words, the truth isn't the truth. At issue is whether the president obstructed justice when talking to his then FBI director, James Comey, about his embattled former national security advisor, Michael Flynn.
You're talking about whether or not the president asked James Comey to go easy on Michael Flynn. And James Comey says he did, and the president says he didn't.
That's right. And they will possibly charge him with perjury should he give that answer.
And complicating matters, the fact that White House counsel Don McGahn has already spent hours answering questions from Mueller's team.
If Don McGahn's statements and all the testimony from all these other individuals conflicts with the president, that would be one more reason for him not to sit down, because that's a mountain of evidence against whatever the president recalls from those details. That's where perjury becomes a problem.
And in that same interview with Reuters, the president also said that he could direct the Russia probe if he wanted to, but he's decided to stay out of it. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
All right, Doug, thanks for getting us all caught up there. Okay, this next story I am eagerly waiting to watch with you. And that's because it's going to explain why mosquitoes bite some people and not others. I'm always the one who gets bit all the time. And I will admit, this monsoon season, I haven't noticed the mosquitoes as much as I used to notice them when I lived in Texas.
Picture this, you're sitting outside for the evening, maybe having a glass of wine, and the mosquitoes are attacking you, but not the person sitting next to you. Do you ever wonder, why are they biting me and nobody else? Well, there are some myths that maybe it's your blood type, maybe you're really sweaty, maybe you eat a lot of garlic, but for the most part, researchers say that's not scientifically true. So what is true? Well, there are more than 3,000 different species of mosquitoes, but only a fraction of them like to bite us. Now, according to Staffordshire University in the UK, they select us using the chemical composition of our sweat. Mosquitoes select people for the bacteria on our skin, which produces odor, and that reveals how tasty we might be. So our sweat isn't necessarily producing the odor, but it's the bacteria on our skin that gives off a certain scent. So what creates that scent and that bacteria? Well, that's still a bit of a mystery. It can depend on what you eat and where you live. So bottom line, if you're a person who gets bitten by mosquitoes, you can experiment with changing your diet a little bit, but really, to keep those mosquitoes away, maybe some long sleeves, long pants, and some good old-fashioned bug spray. With your Fox Medical team, I'm Dina Centofanti.
Did she just say bacteria? Oh my, I don't know if that's what I was ready to hear. All right, this next top story is about TSA agents were encouraged to target a specific type of people, supposedly. Let's find out.
There was an Air Marshal Jeopardy game board hanging in the Orlando field office. And this is what started the culture of the retaliation and discrimination against minority groups.
A game former Air Marshal Henry Preston claims was rigged against minorities at OIA. Our Fox station in Charlotte first reporting on the allegations. Preston telling them and now us, between 2007 and 2010, his supervisor encouraged the marshals to target African Americans for suspicious persons investigations.
It had nothing to do with fighting terrorism whatsoever. All they wanted to do was get stats in what they call surveillance detection reports.
Preston says marshals were encouraged to target all minorities, but especially African Americans. What were some of the things they were telling you?
Go after the blacks, although they use the N-word. They're the ones who have the most warrants.
The supervisors, he says, threatened and berated them if they didn't comply.
We even had one supervisor tell one of our FAMs that he would burn their house down.
That was the threat?
Yes.
Now Congresswoman Val Demings writing this letter to the acting inspector general for the Department of Homeland Security, urging him to investigate the, quote, extremely troubling allegations. Congressman Darren Soto also joining in on the fight.
Should these allegations prove true, this gentleman needs to be fired and there needs to be a top-down shakeup.
Preston says he's brought all this to lawmakers and the TSA. The TSA sending this statement to our Charlotte station, Fox 46. The Transportation Security Administration and Federal Air Marshal Service do not tolerate discrimination of any kind, period. Federal air marshals are from all walks of life and come to work every day for one reason: to protect the traveling public.
I'm hopeful now, but cautious.
Cautious. Hopeful, but cautious. That's what he just said. Okay, so this next story. Do any of you have breweries where you live? Do you like to go there? I feel like everybody has a brewery, owns a brewery, works at a brewery. So since it's become so popular, people have to think of like creative ways to make theirs a little bit different, right? Okay, well, this next story is about one in California that's offering pints with goat petting. So it's kind of like petting zoo plus a bar at the same time. Anyway, let's watch.
When you hear the name and see the logo for Goat House Brewing, you assume there's some interesting story behind it. It's not until you get to their brew house and you can hear why it lives up to its name.
People are pretty fascinated with the goats.
It's easy to see why. It's not every day you can find a place where you can have a beer, hang out with Brewdog Georgia and 30 of her bearded friends.
They're not just kind of like goats. I mean, they have names.
Like Shrek, Fiona, Yoda, and Sugar. For the last 5 years, Michael and Kathy Johnson have drawn in customers for the pints and goat petting. In April, Forbes magazine named the brewery the second fastest growing craft brewery in the country.
We draw people from all over, not only in the state, but surrounding states. And it's kind of we're the only place to get our beer and get this experience is right here.
Kathy says when they first opened the brewery, there were only about 12 in the Sacramento region. Now there's close to 100, but they're still the only ones that offer you this unique experience of getting to hang out with these guys while you sip a beer. While the animals bring the customers in, the Johnsons believe it's really the cold beers that keep them returning because
we like to call it farm to tap.
We grow the ingredients, we grow the hops.
We have an orchard we pull from. Everything is sourced either here on our farm or within like a mile radius.
And it's connecting back to where your food, or in this case, beer, comes from.
Just remember, you may have to watch out for some of that recycled alfalfa, but hey, you'll always have a freshly brewed stout to enjoy. In Lincoln, Pedro Rivera, Fox 40 News.
You see what I mean? They said, you know, there used to be 12 breweries in Sacramento. Now there's 100. I'm telling you, there's so many. Craft beer. What's your favorite kind? If you drink, that is. Not everybody does. All right, this next top story I have for you. A man discovers a meteorite older than Earth in his yard. And guess what? It's right here in the valley. Our Steve Kraft reports.
Imagine a rock falling in your front yard from outer space, a stony meteorite. Cody Horvath of Glendale found one and took these pictures.
It didn't look like a normal rock, and it looked like it had been on fire, and it looked like it hit pretty hard. So at that point, I thought this might be a meteorite.
The really freaky thing is that for most of us, it's probably just a rock. But Cody saw something more.
So I took it inside to look it up and found out that there's such a thing as like chondrite stone meteorites. And so once I found that out, it looked very similar to the meteorite pictures that I found. I was pretty sure that indeed it was a meteorite.
The Glendale meteorite is now being studied by Dr. Lawrence Garvey, one of the world's leading experts in meteorites, who teaches at ASU.
Each meteorite that we pick up is older than the Earth. So this one that we found, that was found in Glendale, is older than the Earth. So by studying its characteristics and its mineralogy, we get clues and insights into our solar system formation.
Wow, what do you all think about that? I know I was really happy to see that story yesterday. It just like makes you think about space and like what's up there, it can fall down here and all sorts of stuff. So, okay, this next story, it's after learning the news of Aretha Franklin's death last week, talking about how to treat pancreatic cancer.
As the nation mourns the death of Aretha Franklin, it has many of us asking, why is pancreatic cancer still so hard to treat, so hard to detect, and so hard to survive? The disease kills 80% of those diagnosed with it. That's because the pancreas is deep in the body and symptoms are very hard to feel or notice, and it usually gets diagnosed too late to be cured. Only 20% of pancreatic cancer patients survive for a year after getting diagnosed. Just 7% make it for 5 years. Now, Ms. Franklin had a much more rare and less aggressive form of it, a neuroendocrine tumor. She survived 8 years after her diagnosis.
We have no effective screening test currently as it stands that can help patients diagnose pancreatic cancer. So there is an extreme rush to figure out a clinically relevant test.
By the time doctors find these cancers, they've usually spread to other parts of the body and they're hard to treat. Currently, there are no screening tests, but doctors, including Dr. Kwan, are working together to help find tools for early detection. And that's really the key to surviving it. With your Fox Medical team, I'm Dina Centofanti.
All right, everyone, we're taking you back out live outside the courthouse where we're waiting for somebody to come out and talk about the Michael Cohen plea deal that was reached this morning. Meanwhile, we're talking about the longest running bull market we've seen.